Good evening, welcome to MOTS presents MOTS Ado About Nothing.
MOTS Ado About Nothing. MOTS Ado About Nothing.
Where we apply the revolutionary MOTS scale to classic and contemporary literature.
MOTS Ado About Nothing. MOTS Ado About Nothing.
This podcast contains mature content, spoilers, language. You have been warned.
Hello, and welcome back to MOTS Ado About Nothing. Today, we have a short story, Bloodchild by Octavia Butler. I am here at the table with Veronica.
Heyo.
Ian.
Hello.
Scott.
Yes.
And myself, Steve-O. We have a short synopsis by Ian.
Alien centipedes breed with human males as a metaphor for pregnancy.
Thank you. And we're going to start off the MOTS system with Veronica talking about the introduction to this story and whether it was effective. So, Veronica, what did you think?
Take it away.
It definitely caught my attention. The introduction to the story is the family getting drunk off of the eggs that are provided to them by their centipede.
It's a narcotic of some sorts. I took it as. Yeah.
And I didn't know whether to be disturbed or intrigued, and I think it was a little bit of both.
I like that. Yeah. Okay.
Because the way it was introduced, everyone was addicted to it. They desired it. And even those that needed it were ashamed to want it. And that, I think, was what caught my attention the most and got me to keep reading it.
Actually, I kind of got a metaphor for heroin right off the bat.
Yes.
The fact that they had like the injection that made you feel good but sleepy.
True. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I also kind of liked, I don't remember exactly how early this was, but that the mother in the story didn't want to take it.
She held off. It's pretty early.
Held off, but it was made clear that she wanted to have some of that egg, but she refused to, partake in and of herself.
I think it's very interesting that they have the kind of mixture of it prolonging your life. And I think they introduced that quite
that's a detail that's dropped in early.
Right, and they talked about his father. What was his name?
Gan.
No, that's the main character's name.
Yeah. Right, his father. His father, his life was prolonged just because he'd done so much egg in his life.
Sure. I enjoyed it as well. I agree with Veronica said it really nicely. It was disturbing but also intriguing at the same time. So, yeah, it kind of got me. I'm going to say something. I'll give you a description later on, but it sort of played to somewhat of one of my biases for a sci-fi story. But regardless, I enjoyed the introduction. Yeah, it was an intriguing one, and it did drop you in. Like Ian said, yeah, I don't know if I got the heroin metaphor, but certainly there were
some kind of drug.
They were taking alien drugs, if you will, and which is going to be an important part of the story, of the plot.
Another thing that was interesting about the introduction was that the centipede almost acts like a pimp, which is why I can relate to the heroin addiction much. Right. Because
so it was kind of a metaphor for that, maybe, perhaps.
It felt like they were stuck in this life, the family, and there was really no way out. And this is just the introduction. You're not really getting, the full story of what's going on. But it's enough to know that there is no way out for them.
Right.
And so they give in to this dirty habit, which they have no choice.
Fair enough.
There's 2 points I want to make. First of all, I completely agree with the point you're making. I feel it kind of, after the introduction, tonally shifts in the direction of where it went later on. But that's for different questions.
Right.
I agree with that, though.
This is exactly an issue, though, I have with science fiction and reading it. Later on, the main character, Gan, is talking about how, the alien's so alien that he can't feel attached to it. And it's the same thing here. I'm reaching for metaphors to feel attached to this story. And I couldn't get invested in any of the characters or in the situation because they're just throwing you a lot of strange names.
Details, kind of, yeah.
And I guess you're trying to build a world, but it didn't have enough of this world in it to really invest me in this story.
All right, this is probably something that we can talk about later more at length, but I kind of got enough of the world to get invested in the story the first time that I read it. But there were times throughout where I was like, I would like to know more about this, or I would like to know more about that. But that's something that we can talk about.
But it's not knowing more. It's that it's so removed from what I know.
Right.
And this is a personal taste issue. That
Sure,
I don't like such a world that's so different that I don't care about any of it.
But the thing is, like, I think what a lot of good sci-fi tries to do is that they try to make that alien world into something that is relatable. And I think that if it's done well, it can do that. And in terms of this, I really like the idea of it. Perhaps it was a little bit alien to me, just in terms of what Octavia Butler was trying to do in this story. But again, that's a thing for later.
We'll get into that.
I think everybody's kind of given what they thought about the intro. Mm-hmm. So let's give our scores. Veronica, 0 or 1 for
1.
the intro. 1. Ian,
I'm gonna have to give it a 0.
Okay.
I'll go to 1.
I'm gonna give it a 1 as well. So we're gonna move on to the main body of this story.
All right, well, first I'll kind of establish a little bit about what happens in the story. So you're starting off with this family being drugged out, as we mentioned in the introduction.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get wrapped up in this world where these alien creatures that are kind of... I gather them as being centipede-ish, but...
They're certainly described at length to imply that, yeah.
Very insect-like, if nothing else.
And they use the humans to basically inject eggs into the humans, and then once the eggs hatch, they take the larvae out, and the human beings generally should survive, although it's a gruesome procedure.
It's a survivable process, but sometimes not.
And probably a very important thing to note also, and I don't know, you may be getting this, but I want to make sure that it's said, is that injecting human males, is preferable to injecting human females.
Although, do they ever establish why
Yes.
that is?
Because the females can carry on the human species.
Right.
Yes.
And they will have more bodies to inject.
And this is a big thing, and Octavia Butler has a little epilogue to this that she even speaks about it. This is her male pregnancy story, basically.
We'll discuss more of that in themes.
Right.
The protagonist watches one of these pregnancies happen, and he knows that he's going to have this happen to him one day, and it kind of makes him question whether he wants to go through with the process, to the point of almost willing to take his own life, though I never really bought that, but we'll get to that eventually. Did it carry me through? It's a tough question. I read this in a rush, trying to get this done for the podcast, and it took some effort to get through. It wasn't always strong, but there were parts in it. I particularly like the relationship between the main alien,
Tagatoi,
and Gon, or whatever, Gon.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's gone.
And him coming to grips with that kind of did carry me through with it. Mm-hmm. But those are my thoughts on it.
So, as you said, somewhat difficult to say. It's funny because, as you said, you were trying to rush through it. Like, it's not that I wanted to stop reading it, but it became somewhat of a chore during it.
A slog, would you say?
It approached a slog, I guess I want to say. It wasn't quite a slog. Like, I've definitely read things that were way more of a slog, in quotes, than this. Just that it threatened to lose me, I guess I want to say. So, while it carried me through, it wasn't the strongest. You know what? The middle part of it started to kind of lose me. Then, at the end, it sort of picked up again. So, given that, like, that probably averages out to a decent, body of it, like, was fine overall. It's just that there were times in which I was like, I could put this down, and if I didn't pick up again, I might be okay with that.
While I will agree that there were times that it was not entirely compelling, I really like this story, and...
Well, it was your choice, so you should.
Right. Correct. It was my choice. That's why I'm leading the conversation here. I really like this story, and kept me involved with the story for the most part. There were a couple brief parts where I kind of didn't care all that much.
Even you yourself admit it got slow.
Right, I would agree, but I think it came back strong from those while I was reading it.
Fair enough.
Every time. There were a couple scenes that I really enjoyed reading about. The birth scene, I thought was really visceral.
It was
and
intense.
Really visceral and intense. The well, I guess this is involved in the birth scene, but where he talks about the gun that the family has. That was all really interesting and gives you a lot of backstory about the politics of the place. His scene with his brother, who just kind of went crazy because he didn't want to be involved in this in all this after something that he saw when he was younger. I think he said he saw botched
a misbirth,
pregnancy. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you will, yeah. An alien miscarriage, we'll say.
And then kind of the whole coming together towards the end. Like, I don't want to go into the end either because that's the next question, but
overall,
the thing with his brother goes into that towards the end section. So overall, I really enjoyed the body of this work.
And the centipede really enjoyed your body.
Yeah. Well, it would.
They will.
Yikes.
Oh, to Gatoi.
The body for me was difficult to get through, mostly because these scenes were so graphic at times. Maybe the emotions from the children as they were watching it were a little bit graphic for me. I also felt frustration because I think most of the body was denial, with him putting together the pieces of what he knew were truths.
Well, he was struggling with himself, being confronted face to face, which is, we'll get to that.
Certainly, but I don't like children, so having
Well,
to
neither do
have
I, but
them deal
that's what I'm
with,
gonna say.
you know, what they want to believe or were led to believe, and then being faced with the truth, the reality of things, I was having difficulty getting through the body because through the majority of it, I was just fearful and I wanted somebody to fight back. And yet these are children, and it kind of kept bringing me back to the children being so young. How can they truly understand and really make a decision of what they want to happen?
Well, not only are they children, but they're an entirely oppressed race at this point.
They're subservient to the alien
right.
race.
They're absolutely subservient, even though it's tried to be made that they're kind of on equal ground, but they're not. They're absolutely not.
That's from the human's point of view.
Yeah, because they've been fed this line that they're equal, you know. But what I wanted to ask you was, or what I wanted to maybe explore a little bit is, do you think Veronica, specifically you, like as a woman, you read this a little bit differently than we do? Because,
or did
you know,
at all?
You have the threat of pregnancy at some point in your life.
Jeez.
Well, we haven't met the centipede species yet, so
right.
You never know.
That's true. I mean, we could too, but not as of right now. Not as anything we know.
But I can see what you're coming from, and that's actually a really good point, because it felt like the rape of these little children, for me, because they were being violated. It's not something that they're asking for. It's something that, like you said, it's not a choice that they're given. It's a violation of their own body for things that
it's
they don't
supposed
want
to be
do.
a choice, but they're not. They don't know what they're signing up for, I guess I want to say.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
quite-
They do. There are points in the story where they make it known that, or at least Gon has a choice of whether he wants to do it or not. But he's still been brought up his entire life for this purpose. He's been
Indoctrinated.
like brainwashed into believing that this is what he was born for.
The thing is this, right? This definitely mentioned in the story where they say, like, oh, he saw the diagrams, but when seeing it in real life, it was much, much different.
Right.
But he knew, like, in theory, in quotes, like, he knew what he was getting into by becoming a host.
I'm going to save my points to this for themes.
Okay. Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Okay, but just to answer what you two are saying, I understand what you're saying, and I completely agree. Mm-hmm. However, when I say rape of, a human's body, it's because they haven't been given the full story. When you're not
propaganda.
fully aware of what you're getting yourself into, then you can never really truly accept what's going to happen to you, nor do you have that choice to accept it happening to you.
You're right. You're saying it's a false choice, like an illusion of choice. Really.
Right.
Absolutely.
And this may be getting into dangerous ground. However, I think that assenting to something like this, I want to be very careful with how I phrase this.
Take your time.
Go on.
Well, we'll hold on to this
All
for
right.
themes,
Okay.
and then
Hold for themes.
let's just do this. Body. Ian, what's your score?
I'm really, 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 really installing right now because I don't know what to give
All right,
this.
Do you want to hold
pass
off?
for a sec.
No, I'm going to give it a very, very lukewarm one.
All right.
Same for me. The softest of all ones, but yes, one at the end of the day.
I'm going to give it a 1.
I'll give it a 0.
Oh, all right. Okay, we're going to move on to Scott's going to start this one. We're talking about the ending
Yes.
of the story.
Actually, I'll tell you that I enjoyed the ending. The ending that brought me back, I guess. As I said, like what I said about earlier about the body, came close to losing me here and there, and almost did, but then brought it back, and like I was interested. And so finally, at the actual end, I did like it. I enjoyed how it all worked out.
I found it incredibly sexual ending. Basically,
there was a weird sexual undertone. In fact, the whole time, I would say, which we're about to speak about.
But in the ending, Gon ends up getting impregnated by T'Challa, and you witness T'Challa, whatever alien
centipede alien.
So they have this kind of like very not sexually explicit scene, but emotionally explicit.
It's like tender, if you will. Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah.
Like you're watching him go through all the emotions of losing his virginity to a centipede.
Right.
So
yes.
Right. Exactly.
Which is hilarious on the surface, but like it's a serious theme, as we'll get to soon.
It was kind of like very shocking to me.
I agree. Like so, I think what I'm going to say is like they both Gon, the human main character, and the centipede. Tagatoi. They both had arcs. They learned and changed at least, and so in that sense, that's why I think I liked it. How it shook out was well done. That's even though it may have like meandered to get there.
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. Like I thought that at the end there was this. It started off where they were, I don't know, psychically close, and then this void grew in between them throughout the story, and then at the end. They came back together,
I'll
and as weird as the nature of the relationship between Tagatoi and Gon is like so strange, but at the end they kind of fulfill the purpose that they had in the beginning.
I've decided that I'm going to do this review as Sigmund Freud from now on. I think it's the best way of
approaching this story. All right.
But I also wanted to say that the way that Octavia Butler wrote this. She said was all about male pregnancy, so clearly there's going to be a large sexual portion of it. Yeah, like, sure. Exactly.
Yes, but for all of the idea of having the male pregnancy, it's still involved a vulnerable individual being pierced, and it was very kind of attached to how we view sexuality.
Right. It's a reversal of that role.
But it's not a reversal of that role. It's just replacing the female for a male in a similar situation. It's more of, this is what it would be like for it to happen to you.
Right. But I think that was the whole point. That was what she wanted to say. Like, this is what it's like.
I agree with that.
And here's a way for you to connect with that, you know?
Excuse me, Dr. Ford. Sometimes a centipede is just a centipede. That's all I wanted to say.
The ending was very, very interesting. Definitely awkward at times to try and read, considering that it's a child that we're talking about.
But I think that's somewhat of the point of it.
Centipede.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mostly the centipede part. I think was the awkward part.
But it definitely brought me back in because I think you're right. It did kind of give me a little bit of closure as far as where the characters eventually wanted to end up or where they felt
where they naturally ended up being. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I enjoyed it for that, but I didn't like the way it ended. But it was enjoyable, but I didn't like the way it ended. So
I think that like as far as endings go, you don't have to
like it. Absolutely
like it as long as it does its job well as an ending.
Right. So while it was interesting, I didn't like it, but I still was brought back into the story because of it.
You appreciate it for what it was, regardless. Yeah,
right.
My major issue with the ending is that it wasn't necessarily in the end a choice by Gon to be impregnated by a centipede. It was a threat that it would happen to another family member. That you're not having sex with me. I'm going to have sex with your sister. Then.
Yeah.
And
it was a choice to protect someone as opposed to a choice to accept
pawn off responsibility.
Yeah, but I think if you're trying to do a parallel to pregnancy, saying that the only way to get into this is if you were doing it to have the masculine protect my, I think that goes against what her ultimate point would be.
Or Gon took the place of the female character in these scenarios, and he, as he said, I believe, was I wanted to keep you to myself, or something along those lines.
He did
and
say
so
that. Yeah.
what, he gets impregnated to keep the centipede with him?
It's not only I agree. It's not only protection, but it's
a
also
symbiotic relationship.
It's also
I got
like
out of it.
he's fostered this relationship for the entire time, and he wants to hold on to that too. At the same time,
This author has a very negative view of why people have relationships and get pregnant.
so I read a whole book of short stories by her, and they're all like very dark, but with kind of a positive outlook at the end,
All
maybe.
right.
I would say this is dark. I just think this is very cynical view of...
It's a practical analysis of
it's-
reproduction.
I'll save that for
All right,
you.
all right.
ahead.
So, ending, Scott.
I'm giving it a 1.
I'm also gonna give it a 1. Veronica.
A 1.
All right.
I will as well give it a 1.
Okay. Now we're going into themes, which
Turned over
Ian
and
has been ready for the entire time. I'm going to go ahead and start. I think there were actually several themes that can be taken from this. She does an epilogue into this short story where she kind of explains what she was thinking.
Yeah. She tells you the theme kind of anyways, but...
I'm kind of torn about it. I liked reading that. I liked knowing what she was thinking about, but I could have also done without it, read into it myself. What she said that she wanted to talk about was this male pregnancy idea.
Yeah. She's gender flipping, sure.
Which I think is an interesting thing to talk about. But I think there are also like themes of human slavery in here. And I think that's pretty obvious.
I may point something out. I believe, to your point, in the afterword itself, she says that often this story has been seen to be about slavery, and she said that was not my intent at all.
Right, she says that, but I think that's a clear
You
thing.
think it's a Freudian thing?
No, it's just a clear thing that you can take from this story. Like,
Yeah, but okay,
It's
but
very superficial, though.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like, yeah, it's that's the obvious theme, but again, the author herself had said that she did not intend that.
In the story, I wouldn't say it's very superficial. I think it goes very deep into the idea that this ingrained idea of slavery can be so deep within you as the person who's the slave that you kind of love the person who is...
You love Big Brother? Or...
Their lives are run by another race of people. Or centipedes, as the case is. And
another sentient species.
I think it's something obvious that you can get out of this story.
All right.
I think it actually kind of goes pretty deep into that ingrained idea that you develop a relationship with any other sentient thing, whether it be a human or a centipede, that you are in close contact with, no matter what. No matter what their role is in your life, no matter who they are, those two sentient things, people, whatever, are going to develop some kind of relationship. And it goes into that, which I think is an interesting thing to look at. Ian, go ahead.
Okay.
You're smirking like a motherfucker, so I'm sure this is going
I've
to be...
never smirked. So I want to look at this, as I said, through kind of a Freudian analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have what's the somebody's name?
Tagatoi.
T'Challa, Black Panther. T'Challa. Okay.
Now who's being racist?
It sounds like the person's name. So we have T'Challa. Now she's supposed to
It's not
represent.
Tagala.
What is it?
It's Tagatoi.
T'Challa.
Tagatoi.
All right. T. We have T.
Tagati.
Who represents masculinity, represents manhood, and their interests in what pregnancy and relationships are about.
Even though I'm pretty sure Tagatoi
She's
is a female.
Yes.
But I
In the
said
story.
it represents.
Right,
Yes,
right,
right.
of course. Which is another, which is the other flip.
You're right. Take it away, Dr. Freud.
Yes, but they still hold, even though they flipped the thing, they still hold all these classical views of what a relationship is about. So, according to Octavia Butler,
All right.
the masculine id is only interested in preserving its own species by implanting a child within the female. T discusses how other members of her species are only interested in kind of like the brutal rape and pillage of humans, the female.
Terrans, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
So you kind of have this kind of very negative view of what males are about. Now, you spoke of the oppressor before. And perhaps it's not necessarily the slavery angle, but the masculine oppressor trying to keep... Is she trying to tell the Terrans that I'm here for you because I'm interested in your well-being? that we're equals, or am I here because I want you to bear my child, and I'm only telling you that you're equal to me? Meanwhile, Gon represents the female. He's afraid of going through with the whole process. Mm-hmm. He's only seen it in textbooks and, so forth, and in school. They don't know what a live birth is actually like. At the end, he threatens to kill himself in order not to get pregnant, and then ends up, to protect his sister, ends up sleeping. But as Veronica, I believe, pointed out earlier, that wasn't the intent at all. It was that he was just afraid and wanted all along to be with T.
It was more selfish. Yes. The id thing, exactly as you said.
And then at the end, after having sex and being impregnated, he felt whole.
More complete,
now.
Yeah.
So the male's only interested in oppressing women and impregnating with the babies. The women are only whole when they find a male to impregnate them. That's the themes I got out of this.
Okay.
I can't really add to that because that's why I felt so creepy crawly through this entire story.
Fair enough. I'm not going to argue against any of that. I'm just sort of expanding, give a couple things. I'm waiting to say this. This story was completely Cronenbergian to me, if you will. It's a body horror story. It's about the unease that comes with having your body be altered by something, whatever it may be. And I want to bring this one thing up. I believe they drop it in detail, whereas they set up like the dynamic like between the centipede race and the humans, where they said in a previous, before the peace that exists now, right, we used to just keep you all hopped up on the egg drug, and that would guarantee you reproducing. And they're basically war cattle at that point.
Yeah.
Like they're less than equals.
But they realized that they were sentient, and then they wanted
like
to treat them better, I guess.
Tagato's people treated them as if they were just animals anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like part of the history, which maybe goes to slavery thing, maybe not. But I like what E said about even though he's channeling Freud, I think it's somewhat valid more often than not that the male-female dynamic, how pregnancy is viewed and how societies themselves deal with it. There's also a line, I believe, that says like all pregnancies are bloody, like even humans ones. Like I believe that was their point about that, right?
Can I just say that it only brought to the front of my mind and my imagery what I picture to this day pregnancy being or giving birth, which is the Alien movie, something moving inside of you, which did not help at all trying to get through this
exactly.
story.
That's what I'm
Well,
saying.
I think that was the whole point.
I think she's invoking that. Like I said, it's Cronenbergian like horror. Like your body's invaded by an outside force that isn't natural to you. That's a very scary. Like that's a very primal fear, and even perhaps pregnancy, like natural pregnancy itself, is something like that.
It's akin to body horror,
kind of. Yeah, your body is changing and something else is growing inside you, regardless of that, if you're species or not. So all this, to my point, is I think those were very well addressed themes, and I'm going to give it a 1 just to preempt myself. But I think that's what I got out of it in terms of that. Like I saw because it could be a Cronenberg film itself,
right?
And the exploration of that Freud style is going to be interesting because as I said, it's probably one of the most primal fears you could have.
Yeah. Well, getting pregnant is the most primal fear that I have. I don't want to do that.
Weird.
It's mine.
Sorry, ladies.
Getting murdered by an
that
animal
sounds terrifying to me.
As a personal story to this, I had a pregnancy scare with an ex-girlfriend once, and that was utterly terrifying.
Even for you, yes.
Let alone.
Yeah, I'm sure it was much worse for her, though.
Yes, I imagine so.
Sure,
so
fair enough.
I sympathize with.
Yeah, I mean that's I don't know. That's kind of
with my kind, thanks.
With your kind. It's this type of story that kind of gets you thinking about things like
Sure.
What if
that's what sci-fi is for?
What if you could get pregnant, man?
Maybe you're just Arnold Schwarzenegger in that movie when he becomes pregnant. That movie did it first. That's all I'm saying. All right, go on.
Yeah. Oh, that happened. That was a movie.
It existed.
Anyway, themes, guys. I'm gonna start. I'm gonna give it a 1.
I will also give it a 1.
I'm going to give myself a 1, and thus depart some of that 1 off onto this.
Right.
I'm going to give both Ian and the story a 1 on themes. I think everything we said was addressed, and you can get out of it, and it was addressed well.
All right, 1s across the board. Sounds good. Now we're going to go into the antagonist. Veronica, I'm interested to hear who you think the antagonist of this story is.
Tagatoi. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's Mr. T. For sure.
Mrs. T, to be.
It's Ms. It's Ms. She's not married.
Go on, though.
I think Tagatoi played good cop, bad cop during different parts of the story, but throughout the entire thing, she had one goal, which was she wanted to have a
wanted to bang that
child
little boy.
to impregnate him, and yeah, she tried it in a very nice, sweet way, giving him a whole egg to himself, treating him special, having him sit in her lap or whatever.
Embraced in her
Not
many
Not only
limbs.
that, she courted him
Yeah.
for years.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Since he was born.
And it's just, again, it's that creepy idea and feeling, and it was mostly always coming from Tagatoi. Always. No matter how sweet she was being,
She was manipulating him, no
it
matter
was
what.
that creepy guy in the corner at the bar that's buying you a drink to try and get you to come over.
So hold on. Here's a question. And I agree, it felt creepy a little bit while I was reading it, but why does it feel creepy? She has given him a life-extending drug his whole life. She has given him a comfortable place to live his whole life. Like, she's courting him.
She's protecting him from being raped constantly by other centipedes.
Right. This is the story of, like, if she was a guy and he was a woman in a classic romance novel, would that be a lot less creepy? I feel like it probably would. Like, if the same types of things... I mean, not if she was, courting... Not if the guy was courting a woman since she was born. Say it was a romance novel and it was a guy who was, like, 25 and a girl who was 18, and it started there, and it was like, oh, this guy is giving her a place to stay. He's, like, helping her out with a place to stay, and he's feeding her, and...
In the classical romance novel, so she would have run away with the younger...
Oh, yeah, fair enough. I mean, I haven't read too many romance novels.
Okay, but...
My question is this. So, like, it's the classic idea of a romance, but put in such a strange way that it seems creepy because it's a centipede, and it's a dude. It's a little boy.
It's an arranged situation.
Yeah.
The mother has already given up, essentially, maybe forcefully made to give up on trying to fight what's going to happen. And as you guys were saying earlier, they don't have a choice. So
that's how society is set up in this world.
Regardless how much he or she has courted the child, it's all to their own selfish, goals or needs.
But so is everything. So is any romance.
Actually, Miss T points out that how is this any different than if you were back on your homeworld? People enslave others all the time, and people kill others all the time. The thing is, I think that the true villains are the Terrans, because they don't appreciate what a good setup is.
Okay.
I can't.
I mean, feel free to elaborate.
I don't think that. I think that it's an actual kind of weird way of describing it. Again, I'm doing it through Freud of a relationship and coming to terms with that. So, I think the real villain is perhaps the ignorance. Like the thing, this is all kept in private. You can't know what all of this is really like, and the idea of it as keeping that kind of puritanical kind of value is a lot of like the villainy there. That perhaps if both of them had seen everything, Gon's real reaction is not because he feels betrayed that what's going to happen to him. It's that the shock, the visceral shock of it happening, and he found out later in life that didn't match up to what he's been told. So if he had grown up around it,
I think that's a really good point. Obviously, there are things that are strange because this is a completely strange world. It's a sci-fi story. But, like, I think there are a lot of, like, points that it has in common with, like, a standard romance story.
Man meets centipede. Man
Right.
falls in love with centipede.
When Harry
Man gets impregnated by centipede.
When Harry met centipede. Sure.
But, like, I think it's a really good point that the real enemy here is the ignorance, that they're kept ignorant of everything that is going to happen. Oh, the humans are kept ignorant of all the things that are going to happen to them when they are actually impregnated. I think that perhaps that makes sense for probably women a lot of times too, where you don't have the full idea of, like, if you get pregnant when you're 18 or 20 years old, you don't have the full idea of what pregnancy is. Like, you just don't know, and then it happens, and then you're like, holy shit, what the hell did you just do to me?
Remember, though, it's against the Bible to teach about sex in high school and whatnot, because that'll lead to pregnancy.
Just as a little aside, Octavia Butler talks about in the epilogues of some of her other stories how she had a really religious... She was raised really religious, right. And that comes into a lot of her stories.
Which may come like, sure, alright, so let me just... I like that you thought that Tagatoa could be considered an antagonist, but you touched on something, and I'll say, the real antagonist is puberty, more or less. Or yeah, the ignorance about mature sexual things, regardless of what species you are. I think that is the antagonist. Like, ignorance, what you're told, what you're shown, and what the actual reality of something is, like, related to reproduction, I guess I'm going to say. So, sex ed is the real villain, kind of, here.
Or the real protagonist.
Yeah. Well, maybe, but both, perhaps. But that's how I took out of it. So that's all I have to say. That's my analysis of the antagonist.
All right. So, what do you guys think? Veronica, 1 or 0 for antagonist?
I'll give it a 1.
Okay. Ian?
Stop smiling.
I smile. I'm a happy person.
Never stop smiling.
He's giving a Freudian smirk right now.
I'll give it a 1.
All right.
Begrudgingly.
Well, yeah, I am, of course, because, like, I always point out the thing, like, the overarching monsters, if you will, and coming of age in terms of sex ed and reproduction is going to be a 1.
Right. I'm going to also give this a 1 for antagonist. And then that's going to take us to the protagonist. Ian, what do you think of possibly God? Or possibly something else? Well, who knows?
It's Miss T and God.
Okay.
And they are in...
Their relationship is a protagonist?
They're both dual protagonists, and they're insufferable. It's like watching a teen romance. Are they going to do it? Are they not? Get it over with. That's all I have to say about that.
The protagonist, of course, unresolved sexual attention. That's obvious. Like, in the same way as I just said. But I agree, as humorously as we just said, I pretty much agree with it. They were okay characters, but I just didn't care at the end, so I didn't like them as much. And expand more upon it in a later question we'll get to, but I'll tell you why. But again, they served the point in the plot, but did I like them? Was I immersed, with them? Did I, connect with them? No, not really. So maybe if I was 13 years old, then maybe I would. But
I don't know,
but I know about sex and pregnancy.
Now.
Yeah. I didn't have that centipede to teach me it.
I went up and down with Gon. I liked Tagatoi's character, but Gon was like, eh.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's just kind of like, it was
precisely
Ted from How I Met Your Mother,
Sure, but
just whatever, kind of just there.
Neutral face.
Yeah,
Randy
exactly.
McBlanderson.
Because he needed somebody
the
there.
The plot requires someone to
basically.
be that. Sure, that's what I'm saying. Go on.
I love Tagatoa. I hate Tagatoa. I love Tagatoa.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
That was the whole story.
Exactly. Go ahead, Veronica.
Yeah, I guess Gon, for me, was the protagonist. I still didn't like him.
By default, he is, but...
I was still frustrated with him the entire time. I still didn't like his final choice.
Tagawa was frustrated as well.
Sure.
Jeez. So...
Mrs. T, doesn't matter. Go on.
The reason why... Jeez. So, I think he's a protagonist just because I guess he was the most pure in the characters. I'll say it for this reason. He was ignorant or innocent to certain things in the source.
Which is it? Is it ignorant or innocent?
I apologize.
Innocent. You okay?
Yeah, I had the giggles for a second.
Okay.
I just remember now. Mrs. T's pierogies.
We'll be advertising.
Ew, the eggs. Ew.
We'll be advertising for that soon. Or making a mashup of it. We'll cut that out.
Can we do? Hold on. We're gonna take a commercial break. And
This story is brought to you by Mrs.
Yeah, we'll
T's
be right back after this.
Pierogi eggs.
After this message from Mrs. T's Pierogies.
Sorry.
He's a protagonist. Because he's innocent, I still don't like him. Moving along.
Fair enough.
Ian,
Yes.
what is your score for protagonist?
0.
Okay.
Me too. 00. Mark it 0.
This is probably going to be my only 0, but I'm also going to give it a 0 because Gon wasn't that great. Although I did like Tagatoi, but wasn't enough. Wasn't enough.
Fair enough.
Ditto.
Ditto? 0s all around.
I
Wow.
really did not like Gon.
Gon was whatever. Gon was just a blank face.
May I just
It was-
interject real quickly? You said something earlier, Veronica. I don't like children anyways, and
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
when
yeah.
they're protagonist characters in a story. So
We all know. I'm sure we'll hear
But
more about that in
even yes,
future
But
podcasts.
even as an objective analysis, he just was a weak protagonist. Is all.
All right, so we're gonna move on to secondary characters, and Scott, this is gonna be you, but this is gonna entail like the mother,
The rest of
the
Gon's
brother, and the sisters, whose names I cannot remember for the life of me.
family. Quan, I think, is his brother.
Quan, yeah, you're right.
I'm gonna say I probably wanted to see a story written from Quan's perspective. Everyone else was sort of there again, like as we just said about the protagonist. They were there because they needed to be there. They weren't really fully fleshed out. There's not enough time in the story really to flesh them all out. Yeah, his mother has somewhat of a character, but not much. So the thing is, in an old school tradition of ours, because I did like Quan, Gon's brother, I'm going to give it a 1 based on that alone. And actually, their little argument, their little scuffle at the end, I thought was one of the most interesting parts of the story. And Quan's perspective at when he finally reveals to Gon why he is so unnerved by the actual process.
As a rebuttal to that, though, is it because Kwa, whatever it is a good character, or is it because the absence of good characters uplifts him to
It's
a
Both,
better level?
kind of. By default, you're right. It's sort of like a shady way of assessing it, but I think it is kind of that, and so that's all I'm saying. That's why I think he's the most interesting one, even though everyone else I didn't kind of care about.
I don't know. I like Quan's character. I actually like. I don't remember much about his sister. He has 2 sisters, right?
Yes.
They barely make it.
They're
I don't remember much about his sisters, but what I like about his mother and his brother are the fact that they represent 2 different sides of the struggle against their not imprisonment, the struggle against being completely subservient. His mother refuses to take the egg until she's forced to, and his brother is just kind of a passive watcher of life at this point. He becomes an addict, an egg addict, and like just kind of is trying to go through life without having to deal with anything.
As Freud, I'm going to go off on these 2 characters for a moment. I want to build off what you said, though.
Uh-huh.
The mother refuses to take the egg, and I'm putting that in quotes, air
Right.
quotes. It's aging her prematurely. She's cold. She's reserved. She's not enjoying being sexual. She's not. The father is absentee.
He's dead.
Much-
Dead, I
oh, is he
believe.
dead?
Yes.
Yeah,
He was
he's
much
dead.
older than her when they
Right,
got married.
right.
So, she doesn't take part in this pleasure. It's aging her early.
Mm-hmm.
However, in Kwa, he loves the eggs, but he doesn't want to get involved in that kind of relationship. So he's, in a sense, representing the uncontrolled sexual drive.
Sowing his wild oats, if you will,
Yes.
via eggs.
And the mother is the repressed sexual drive.
Right.
And those are and as you point, the 2 sides of the same coin. And that's way more of an analysis than they deserve.
I don't think so. I think that's as far as a 20-page story goes, I think that's as in-depth as you can get with secondary characters, you know?
Maybe it's artifice of this structure, sure, but
I mean,
I agreed with Ian's statement, anyways.
All right. Well, do you have anything else to say about secondary characters, Veronica?
Well, the mother, the question that's presented to her for the first, 2-3 pages was, why do you want to get old?
Right.
Why won't you take the egg? And I like the way that she doesn't answer it. And it's a silent resolve against everything that's happening around her.
Yes, true.
That doesn't make her a good person, I guess.
It's her refusal of...
It's her way, and it's her giving up, but it's also presented to her, why do you want to leave your children behind? Why do you want to get old and die and leave them?
Right.
So I liked her for that, just because
of her stance, essentially. Yeah.
Certainly, and she wasn't willing to give in to the pressures of, well, your children need you.
It's obvious, I think, in the story that she loves all her children.
Certainly, but she's not going to back
But
down.
she doesn't want to... She believes that the best way to love them is to show them, perhaps, that she can refuse things from...
Doesn't need a man holding her down.
That's right.
Thus, that's kind of the point that I'm trying to get to.
Sure.
So
That's completely valid.
All right, so secondary characters. Scott, you started this one off. What do you give it?
0.
I give it a 1. Verno?
I want to give it a half, but I can only give it a 1.
You can't.
So I'll give it a 1.
You give it a 1? Ian?
Gonna give it
Oh, no. I'm sorry, my friends. I gave it a 1 because of Quan. Everyone else gets a 0. My bad.
I'm giving it a 1 because of the mother. I thought she was the most interesting human character.
Yes.
All right, there you go.
Fair enough.
I have to be...
Okay, so we're going to move on to dialogue. I read this maybe 3-4 weeks ago, and I think it bodes poorly that I can't really remember much of the dialogue. I remember what happened, but I can't remember much of the dialogue.
I read this about a half hour before we started this, and I can't remember.
And like that, it was gone. I'm going to say that too. Sure.
I don't remember any lines of dialogue. That's not to say that there weren't any good ones, but based on what you just said, where you just read it, I can't remember anything that really happened in dialogue. A lot of it was exposition, which was good exposition, I thought, but like it was a lot of explaining what was going on, and like the dialogue was very sparse. I don't have a problem with that. I think in terms of this story, the dialogue probably just stayed out of the story's way. But that doesn't mean it's good dialogue. I think that this story just didn't really use much dialogue, or need the dialogue, perhaps.
But considering how poorly we viewed characters, perhaps good dialogue would have uplifted those characters.
Maybe. I don't know. I liked the characters. You guys viewed them poorly. Although I did give the protagonist a 0 because of Gon. Other than Gon, I thought every character was good. I liked them all. As characters go. Not that I liked the people that they were, necessarily, but like I liked how they were written, how they were explained. But like I can't really remember much of the dialogue. Verno, Scott, anything to say about dialogue?
Yeah, no, it didn't add anything to me. It was mostly the actions in the story that kept me intrigued. It was certainly not the dialogue, so I can't, like you two are saying, you can't remember a single line. And when they did talk, it was courting. So you couldn't even really take it at face value.
Well, there's a lot of really short, very sparse dialogue, and like short and to the point, and that was it. Like the dialogue was there to get to the next section where they wanted to do a big explanation about something, you know?
Except for the final conversation.
Right, the final conversation
when
was...
they're in the kitchen.
Actually, you know what? That's a good point. The final conversation, I thought, was... I don't know if it was good, but it was definitely... It was bigger. It was, you know, it had substance. It had more substance than most of the dialogue in the
It was a lover's quarrel.
Yeah, a teenage one.
Fair enough.
Go on.
As I said, I'm going to just sort of gloss over it. You guys said a lot of the things I would say anyway. It was completely unmemorable, and it was the definition of serviceful, I would say. No more, no less. Therefore, it was very clipped and dry in places. Yeah, sure, it moved the plot, but only to the extent it absolutely needed to. And yeah, I can't recall for you any particular line at all. And as you guys just said, yeah, it was a teenage... That's how I got out of it at the end. So that's all I'm going to say. It was very weak.
So you saying that it was a teenage lover's quarrel actually put me in the mind of thinking that it's more like Lolita. Because the centipede is super old. Very much older than the mother.
More like Twilight.
Yeah, but as you said...
That's true too.
Gross.
I've already said that.
Gross.
I've already said Twilight.
But you had said earlier the fact that that's how they are. Like, it's set up that way, but...
I mean, that's what happens. It's not...
maybe the centipede is older, but her dialogue itself, it might as well be a 15-year-old.
You know, this is, again, or not again, but for the first time, this is a metaphor for sexuality, certainly. However...
Sure. And it's flat as hell.
A centipede putting eggs into a human stomach is not like a sexual thing.
It is for me.
It's not for either of them.
Well, whatever floats your boat, Freud. Sure. I get what you mean.
But if a spider lays eggs in your ears, do you think that's sexual? That's basically what it is.
Yes, but that is an animal doing it without the centipede.
Without cognizance.
So you think anything emotional that involves bodies is sexual?
She's comforting him. She's wrapping him around with all her legs, her limbs in the story, almost in a lover's embrace.
Right, and that's supposed to be the point. It's supposed to
be intimate. Yes,
it's supposed to bring that emotion up in you. That's what this story is all about. It's supposed to
but the
make
dialogue
you
doesn't,
feel
is all I'm saying.
Like it's sexual, but it's. Yes, I just said that it was like Lolita, but it's not actually like a story of like an old man and like a young woman.
Sort of an old centipede and a young man.
Yeah. Right, exactly. But like, but in terms of this, like, ages don't matter between a centipede and a little boy. You know, like that's not. Well, this isn't like a sexual thing.
No, you're right. No. I mean, that's sort of like humorous on the surface, but I mean, because of the setup, yes. Like it's because it's a sci-fi story. It's two wildly different species having to live together.
Right. That's
sort of like goes back to the themes. But regardless, all I'm saying just real quickly, all I mean is that, you know, if humanity goes out into the stars and finds this species living on a planet, they might have to enter an agreement such as this one.
Right.
And that's not necessarily sexual.
Right.
At the end of the day,
I don't know how to explain this. Well,
the dialogue certainly wasn't sexual.
Yeah,
right.
It was
enough.
not.
Agreed. Yes, I have to.
It totally wasn't sexy. So we're all giving the dialogue a 0.
A 0.
I think so.
Let's just go on because we could.
Right.
This can keep.
We
going.
could do this for a while and it'll be weird.
As long as the centipede is, I can speak at length about this. But go on.
So, the next question is about style. We're going to start with Veronica on this one.
No, this was terrible. The only portions that stick out in my mind are the descriptions of the more violent or graphic scenes in the story. Aside from that, everything else was very Sunday, afternoon hazy, just out of it, dry. Go on.
I'm going to say one thing about this. This story had great ideas, but little substance, or little style, I should say. And it really comes across.
I absolutely agree. You kind of stole the words right out of my mouth, Centipede style. Yeah, the premise is quite interesting. Actually having, going through her choice of sentence structure and so forth, it's so dry, it's so bland. It's clipped and it's almost like exposition dumping you, which sometimes may be necessary, but at the end of the day, it didn't grab me, and I didn't quite, I couldn't get into her style. I couldn't appreciate it, is all.
I kind of like the style of this. It was a very. You're right when you say it was clipped, but I don't mind that. I thought that was a good way to write this type of story, where it was like there's kind of this feeling. Well, the humans in this are, I think, supposed to be not really wordy or
all right,
super.
If that's the intent, then
quote unquote educated. Obviously, they're kind of there just to serve the purpose of Tagatoi's people, and it's being told from their point of view. It's kind of like this. I keep going back to this, but it's kind of like this romance story between these two species, these two races, that's told in a tone that's kind of just giving you, on one hand, the facts, and on the other hand, the feelings, and they kind of come separately to you. And
sure.
I didn't mind that. So I'm not saying it's written in the greatest prose that's ever been written. It's no Moby Dick or anything, but
Wasn't Moby Dick very stilted as well?
Moby Dick was brilliantly,
Moby Dick is
beautifully
probably
written.
drier than this, but
It's incredibly boring.
he also wasn't writing about centipedes.
Moby Dick is
impregnating-
beautifully written, though. The prose in
Alright.
that book is whatever. We'll get into that another time. Anyway, I like the style, so I'm going to give it a 1. I'm going out of turn right now. I'm giving it a 1, and I'm guessing everyone else is giving it a 0.
Yup.
I believe that is correct.
Ian, correct?
Yes.
All right. 0, 0, 0, 1. All right, now, would you guys recommend this short story to other people? And we're going to start with Ian.
No.
Okay.
This is the one I struggle with the most because, again, on the surface and the premise of it is excellent. It's a sci-fi thing that I should love, but would I say, hey, read this one? No, I'd probably say read like 20 other stories instead. So I
Name
think
them. Name the 20.
I will if you want. It'll be listed on the website. In all seriousness, to answer, I really can't recommend this one.
Okay. I did recommend this, so I'm going to give that one my... I'm going to say yes, I would recommend it.
Mm.
And I will say no.
No. All right. So, I believe we've got a...
Tally up the centipede's limbs and tell us the scores.
I believe we've got through all of the questions. Veronica gave this a 5. Ian gave this also a 5. Scott gave it a 6. And I'm going to guess I have the best score, even though I'm telling them right now.
You definitely have.
I have an 8. So, our resident math expert, Ian, do you know what the...
Actually, yes, I do.
All right.
It's, oddly enough, a 6.
I think that's somewhat about
So
right.
we gave this a 6. We gave Bloodchild a 6. We will see you guys with a new short story fairly shortly. You know, within some amount of time. For me, I am Steve and
Hello.
Verno and Ian.
And this is Scott, and we all have to be impregnated by centipedes right now, so we'll come back after that.
Okay,
Humans and
bye.
centipedes living
Too
together.
Soon. Too soon.
Lots to do about nothing.
Lots ado about nothing.
Music by Chris Morgan.
Editing and engineering by Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Lots to do about nothing.
This has been a Lost Cinemas production. All rights reserved.